Good evening, everybody. My name is Jade Ion, and I chose to do my final project on the science behind hunger. Hunger begins with appetite, which is the body's impulse to eat. This can be stimulated by a number of things. One being, seeing, smelling, or thinking about food in general. It can also be offset by internal stimulus, such as low blood sugar or just general, you haven't eaten, there's nothing in your system. There are a number of things that cause appetite. Hunger is a body's way of keeping us regulated, which is a form of homeostasis. It keeps us from lacking minerals, proteins, fats, sugars, etc., and make sure that, we have enough to function on a healthy level. It also provides us with energy. And when we're low energy is when the body will release hormones to let the body know it needs to eat. It will usually release high levels of ghrelin, and which is just a hormone that signals to the hypothalamus that the body needs to eat. To regulate these hormones, you need to eat. There are a number of controlling factors of hunger, as I touched on with appetite. One being blood sugar. Especially when blood sugar is low is when the brain will signal to the body that it's lacking and that it needs calories or sugars, and usually these hormones will just be carried to the brain through the bloodstream. Another thing to signal the body is the general emptiness of the intestines and the stomach. The walls of the stomach and small and large intestine have they have a certain sensory where they can physically feel how empty the stomach is. So when you haven't eaten or you've eaten very little, it can offset those certain sensory organs and tell your body that you haven't had enough to eat. And finally, the hormones, as I mentioned too. Hormones will be released in your body when your energy is low or you're lacking in sugars or calories or fats or protein, and you're not functioning in tip-top shape, and it'll let your brain know. The brain obviously controls everything related to your hunger and appetite. The hypothalamus receives signals from all over the body. As I mentioned, the small intestine and the stomach signal when content is low, and also when sugars and other hormones are present or not present. The body tells the brain when it's hungry, and vice versa. It's kind of a interesting system. It plays off of itself, Hormones are released, and then the body tells the brain that these hormones are released. It's kind of blood and glucose levels are a major factor in determining hunger and how hungry or what you need to eat. Usually, the major components are insulin and glucagon, which are huge factors with regulating sugars in the blood. Like a big example would be diabetics. They need to pay extra attention to the regulation of their insulin and how much sugar they're intaking, and they make sure to keep it at a certain level because their body doesn't regulate as well as it should. The sensation of fullness, obviously, is when you've eaten enough, and your glucose level will rise once you're full, once you've had enough, or taken in what you need to eat. Because sometimes it's not even that you haven't eaten enough, it's that you haven't eaten the right things. Your body will signal to the hypothalamus that you have all you need, and that you don't need to eat anymore, and that all of your cravings have been satisfied, and that there isn't anything else that eating would provide for you, since it's a survival instinct. Nowadays we have a lot of luxury with food, where we have larger portions, or just a lot of options, and that can cause overeating. Eating disorders can be easily developed with these temptations, I guess I should say. As I said, with the larger portions, or just the not so good for you food. Like like fast food is definitely a much well, I'm sorry. Fresh fruit and organic foods are much safer than consuming lots of fast food or fried food, just in general. But the temptation is there, and that's a big mental component, and mental health is a big piece of how eating disorders can be developed. I mean, usually they start with a disrupted appetite, whether you feel overly hungry, like you eat more than you are actually hungry for, or you don't feel hungry at all when you should. Usually this is ticked by a certain trauma or stress or sickness, but any number of stressors or outside traumas or stimulus can be traumatic enough to shift the hormonal changes in your body to where you don't feel the need, or you feel too much of the need to fulfill a void. That's usually what eating disorders comprise of. Usually with obesity is when the body starts to ignore when the body signals to itself that it's full. As I said, the walls of the stomach and intestines will signal and tell the body when there's enough in its system, as well as hormones will signal the hypothalamus that, there's enough. But the body can choose to override these signals and to ignore these impulses to stop eating. On the flip side, they can choose to ignore the impulse to eat and just starve themselves. Both are vastly horrible for the body in a number of ways. These are my sources. I hope I did a good job. Thank you for watching my presentation.